You guys. Okay,
Perfect.
we started in
That's
November,
so
right?
You have the sunset, you have the sunset behind.
Maybe I need to just.
Recording in progress.
All right. Good. Does somebody want to officially start the meeting, or would you like me to read the Zoom guidelines first? Either one is fine.
As vice chair.
I guess we'll call to order the meeting of the Water Resources Advisory Board for April 15th, 2024. And Joanna, if you want to do the rule spiel, that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, my name is Joanna Bloom, and I'm serving as the technical host for this meeting. We'll start with sharing a few slides of the virtual meeting rules that we follow. These rules are in place to find a balance between transparency with community members and security that minimizes disruptions. Please provide a full name associated with each person's participation in open comment, and we cannot unmute you without it. If your full name is not currently displayed, you can go ahead and text me at 303-817-1742, and I can help you with your name. The Q&A function in Zoom is enabled and can be used to address Zoom connectivity questions only. Unfortunately, I can't answer technical questions in the Q&A. Members of the public may be unable to control the audio or video features. Video is limited to city officials, employees, and invited speakers only. I'll unmute you when you're recognized to speak. I'll go ahead and call your name, and then you'll have a 3-minute timer that will be displayed, and we'll start once you begin your comments. Thanks so much for your participation. And back to you, John.
I always forget how the swearing in goes. Who leads that?
I think you can just mention the agenda item and then Karen, I think you walk us through the swearing in of the new board member and there's some participation for Katie.
All right. Well, then we'll move to swearing in the new board member, and I'll turn over to Karen.
All right, so Katie has with her the oath of office, and I've asked her to just read that to us, and that'll go into the record. So Katie, if you'll do that.
I, Catherine Bridges, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and of the state of Colorado and the charter and ordinances of the city of Boulder, and faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member of the Water Resources Advisory Board, which I am about to enter.
Okay, that's it. It's official.
Welcome, Katie.
Welcome. It's official.
And then we normally go to the election and asking for nominations.
So we'll elect new board officers tonight for chair, vice chair, secretary, and Greenways Advisory Committee. And I guess we'll just tick through those and open it up to nominations for chair.
I nominate John Berger to be the chair.
I second the nomination.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And we'll move on to vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Steve as Maxwell as vice chair.
I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so Steve is vice chair, and then we'll move to secretary. Any nominations for secretary?
Nominate Amy for the secretary.
All right, any seconds?
I second that nomination.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And then the Greenways Advisory Committee, which is just someone from RAB sits on the Greenways Advisory Committee. It's I've been doing it, I think, the last couple of years. And so we can take nominations for it. I'm happy to keep doing that. I'm also happy to turn it if someone else wants to take it. It's a very low commitment, basically one additional meeting.
If you're okay, I might comment on this one. Yeah. So the Greenways Advisory Committee is one that is made up of a representative from several different boards. From memory, it's the planning board, RAB, the Parks and Recreation and the Open Space Board of Trustees, I believe Transportation as well. It's been inactive the last few years. We haven't had a meeting actually. And the city is going through a board and commission review with consultants. And so that is one that not sure what the future holds for it, for the Greenways Advisory Committee, but it doesn't hurt to do a nomination. And I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Joe Tadiucci. I'm the Director of the Utilities Department.
So, I guess, if interest in doing that, I'm happy to continue, being rep with, I guess, the uncertainty whether it looks like in the future, but if there's strong interest or, Katie, if you want to jump into a new role in your first year, I don't know if folks have strong feelings about this.
I thought you did a really good job of bringing us information when you did have connections, and if you're interested in continuing to do that, I would nominate John to stay on that.
I agree.
Is that a formal nomination?
Yes, that was my formal.
Was that a formal second, Steve?
Yes, it will.
All in favor?
Hi.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have our new board officers. Congratulations. Moving on to approval of the January meeting minutes, which we were sent out, and we also have hard copies here. I read through them, didn't have any comments or edits, but curious if anyone else has any comments or edits.
No.
Then I would move to make a motion to approve the January meeting minutes.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. January meeting minutes approved. It looks, now we move to virtual public comment. We're ahead of schedule. So I forget who I turn this over to. Joanna?
Might be back to Joanne, or did we already do what we needed to do?
No, it is time for open comment, if that works, open public comment. And I do have one member of the public with their hand raised. If there are others that would like to speak under open comment, you are welcome to also virtually raise your hand by using the raise hand function in Zoom. So we'll start first with Lynn Siegel. And give me just 1 second, Lynn, too. You're moving around in my list and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I'm raising and lowering my hand because I couldn't see the group for the last 11 minutes. It just is the City of Boulder sign.
Oh, thank you for the heads up. Yeah, we normally have the room view. You should be able to see the presentation this evening. And let me mess with the view. Would you also like to speak under open comment?
Yeah, now I can see everyone.
Fantastic.
It's bad enough that you can't see me, but when I can't see you, we're both talking to these disincarnate entities. It's
And thank you for sharing that. I changed a setting on the computer here and I didn't realize until you said that everyone wasn't able to see everyone. So thank you.
Okie doke. What I wanted to speak about tonight is two things: the water treatment issue with Xcel Energy and Boulder's water supply in general, for considering the growth that's upcoming with the state government. First of all, Xcel, we really need to have our own municipal electric supply. The Xcel is completely out of bounds. I mean, they had full opportunity to down the electricity during the Marshall Fire. They did not. They even had a line that was how do you say, it wasn't disconnected, but it was messed up and it needed attention, and they hadn't attended to it in the year preceding the Marshall Fire. An internal employee alerted them of this. Well, this affects you, you know, and when we don't have our own municipal electric supply, we can't coordinate. You know, we can react. And that's what Excel does, is react. And their reaction cost us who knows how much this last event that when truly, in fact, we've had the winds like this for decades and they've never had an outage. I had a tree down on my property on December 30th, the day of the Marshall Fire. They didn't come for 3 days. The tree fell on my line. So for 3 days, I was terrified that it could break and then I'd have a live, event starting at my house. So even when they know what's going on, they don't do anything. And then they overreact with a smaller event. And it has not been super dry by any means. Meteorologists have proven that in this last event. The clock's going all crazy. 1 minute, it's 2 minutes, and then it's 52 seconds. So the other thing is just having a good enough, and then when we have our own municipal electric supply, we can coordinate with any generators that we need. Maybe we're gonna not have such huge reactivity type events, and we aren't gonna need the kind of generators that we need to keep the water treated. And as far as growth, I'm working lately on demolishing houses, which seems to be Boulder's plan lately. And the cost of this and the subsidy this is to the developers to build more, just tear things down and build them up, and without a water supply that can take care of that. So do something.
Lynn?
If anybody else would like to speak under open comment, we'll give you just a second to raise your hand virtually. Okay, I don't see anybody else, so you should be all set.
Right, then we can move to our first information item, the water supply update. Kim, as soon as you.
That is
Or
me.
Joe keeping it off?
Joe's gonna do an intro.
All right.
I'll kick it off, and if you don't mind, I might comment just on the testimony from the one public speaker. And under matters from staff tonight, we'll do a brief update on Excel outage and how that was for utilities. So for the water supply update, this is something that we do every year in April. For tonight, this is our only agenda item where we have a prepared presentation and PowerPoint slides. And April and May is kind of our operational water year. It's like the start of that operational year. And if you think about it like bank accounts, we kind of know what we're starting the year with. And so this is the time where we know how much we have in accounts, and Kim will walk you through our situation, which I don't mean to steal her thunder, but we're Thumber. We're in pretty decent position this year. So Kim Hutton is our senior manager who leads our water resources group, and she'll walk us through the presentation. So Kim.
Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Kim Hutton. Like Joe said, I'm the water resources manager. And my team is the one that handles both operations and planning of the water supply. So today, well, first I just want to point out the photo that I'm sharing today. This was taken, this is of Silver Lake Reservoir, but it's the day of the eclipse. Unfortunately, it's not the eclipse, but I thought it was a pretty stunning photo that one of our operators took. So I just wanted to share that with everybody today. But this is kind of what it's looking like up there in the watershed. Got a lot of snow. Things are still frozen up there, but they're starting to melt out down a little bit lower at Barker Reservoir in Nederland. So on the agenda today, I will do an overview of the water supply situation. And then I also wanted to give some highlights from our water conservation program, both highlights from 2023 and then what we're planning for 2024. And third thing, I'll touch upon, there were some questions in the February RAB meeting about some of our water use trends. So I put together a couple figures to address those questions. See here, and then just to provide a little bit of context, so this map was in the packet as well. And Katie, you're gonna see this like every time we come here every April to give a water supply update. And as Joe mentioned, that's because this is kind of like the time of year when all of our indicators are shaping up to tell the story about what we're looking at for the year. But we always start with this map to give you some context. So we're looking at Boulder here, kind of from the east looking west, Continental Divide down the top of the map there. We have 3 sources of water for the city. 2 of those are in Boulder Creek, and those are identified by these blue parcel or polygons, North Boulder Creek and Middle Boulder Creek, and about 2/3 of our water supply comes from those basins. We've got a series of reservoirs and pipelines in the Boulder Creek Basin that where we store water in the reservoirs, we convey the water through the pipelines to the Batassen Water Treatment Plant, where water is treated, and then it's distributed to our service area, which is that parcel or polygon identified by that red hatch area. We also get water from the west slope, the headwaters of the Colorado River, through a project that's operated by the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, and that's the Colorado Big Thompson, or we abbreviate it CBT, and the Windy Gap projects. And that's identified in the sort of that tan colored polygon at the top of the screen. So water is collected on the west slope in Grand Lake, Lake Granby, Shadow Mountain. It's pumped through a tunnel through the Continental Divide and then conveyed to water users in the South Platte Basin. We specifically get water from Carter Lake through a pipeline that goes directly to our Boulder Reservoir Water Treatment Plant. And again, about 1/3 of our supply comes from that source each year. Just to provide some additional context, we have some water supply level of service goals, which we call the reliability criteria. The reliability criteria were adopted by City Council in 1989. And we use them, we develop and plan our water supply system kind of according to these level of service goals. The reliability criteria define the acceptable frequency of water use restrictions for droughts of varying severity. And we model and plan our system with the goal of having no more than 5 years of water use restrictions in the course of a 100-year period. So the intensity of the restrictions that we would implement would vary from reductions in outdoor water use to meeting essential uses only. And since establishing this framework, 2002 is the only year in which we have implemented water use restrictions. So we updated our drought plan in 2022, so just a couple of years ago, and some of you were around for that process. And under that current classification system, the 2002 drought would have resulted in fairly severe limitations to outdoor water use. And I will talk more about that drought plan and how we implement that. So our drought plan provides some guidance on whether we declare a drought each year, and if we do, how we would implement water use restrictions with the goal of meeting some target water savings goals, I guess. May 1st is typically the time of year when, like we said, all of our water supply indicators, when they're going to be telling us the most information. So we, around the 1st of May each year, we will look at, in particular, the PSI, which is our projected storage index, and this comes out of our drought plan. And we run this calculation. And it helps us evaluate our water supply situation for the year. So this PSI is essentially a ratio of available supply to the demands, water demands. The available supply that we're looking at is how much water do we have in storage in our mountain reservoirs, so the North Boulder Creek and the Middle Boulder Creek basins, as well as how much water is available to us through the CVT system. And then our unrestrained municipal demand that we have written up there is how much would our demands be if we let people use kind of whatever they wanted for the year.
Can't remember, Kim, does that number adjust over time? Is that a fixed number, the denominator?
They do not. So the denominator does adjust over time, and that's an update that we made in the 2022 drought plan, how that's calculated. But essentially, we're looking at the last 10 years of water use. And so as we're becoming more efficient over time. So as we become more efficient, that's kind of, it's reflected in that unrestrained municipal demand number. So this is a table from the drought plan that's related to that projected storage index number. So for example, if that ratio, the PSI ratio falls within the 0.85 to 0.56 range, then we would consider declaring a drought alert stage 1. And in a drought stage 1, we are looking to achieve up to a 20% savings reduction in water use for the year. And we would go about getting those by placing limitations on some of the lower priority outdoor water uses. And so those are all kind of defined in the drought plan about how we're prioritizing water use. As Joe mentioned, we've done a preliminary analysis of this projected storage index, and we are sitting comfortably above 0.85 this year. So we're not anticipating needing to declare a drought stage or water use restrictions this year. So the PSI is one tool that we have for evaluating our water supply, but we also look at some other environmental conditions to support the decision about whether or not to declare a drought stage. And one of the 3 of those are snowpack, stream flow, and our regional drought conditions. Show you some information or data that we look at. So this graph was updated today. So what we're looking at here is a map that's talking about our snowpack, specifically our snow water equivalent. And snow water equivalent is the amount of water. If you were to take a column of snow and melt it, it's the amount of water you would get. So if you have light, fluffy snow, there's less water in that than maybe some denser, wetter snow. There's a network of these SNOTEL sites all across the western US. So we're monitoring those in our basin and the Colorado River Basin, just to give us an indication throughout the winter time of how the snowpack is shaping up. And where we stand today, so we are in Boulder Creek, we're in the South Platte Basin. Here, let me get my indicator, my little highlighter, laser pointer. Oh, you can't see that. Oh, here you go. So this right here is the South Platte River Basin. Boulder Creek is just one of the watersheds in the South Platte Basin. And as of today, we're at 100% of the median snowpack for this basin. If you look over at the Colorado headwaters, just on the other side of the divide, also 100% of median, and then statewide also comes in at 100%. So we're sitting pretty well with our snowpack. And then this right here is a graph of one of the SNOTEL sites in the Silver Lake watershed. So it's the University campsite, which is on our property. This is a photo of Eric, one of our operators, who's doing some snowpack measurements. But what this graph is showing in the green line, it's the median snowpack for the past 30 years. So 30-year historical median. The black line is the 2024 water year. So you can see the peak snowpack historically has occurred around May 1st at this elevation in this area. And we are sitting at, let's see, 96% of median right now. So you see this big jump right here. That was a nice storm we had a couple weeks ago. So was that then? So we've got still a couple weeks before the historic peak. Even if we don't hit that peak level, we're still sitting pretty well with the amount of snow we've got up there. And this is a graph of the Middle Boulder Creek snow till site at Lake Eldora. You can see we've already peaked at this site. This one's a lower elevation site, and so it usually peaks and starts melting a few weeks earlier than the one on North Boulder Creek. So we've surpassed the peak median in 2024 for this site, and it looks like the snow is starting to melt from the site. So we also look at stream flow forecasts, and this is sort of for the season. And the reason we're interested in stream flow forecasts is we get our water, the snow melts, translates to stream flow, and then we either divert the water directly from the river to be used at the treatment plant, water treatment plant, or we'll put the water into storage. So we're very interested in how that snow is going to translate into stream flow. Again, reservoir storage is really important to us because like I said, in that projected storage index, we're looking at how much water we have in storage. We don't use all of our storage every year. That storage is like a drought reserve. So our biggest reservoir, Barker, which is the Middle Boulder Creek, we might drain that maybe a third each year on average. So stream flow forecasts are looking pretty good as well. There's a variety of sources we go for stream flow forecasting, and I've just put two of them up here. The one on the left is from Northern Water. The one on the right is from the National Resources Conservation Service, NRCS. And both of these are showing roughly average stream flow forecasts for the year. Northern's, their April 1st forecast was for 109% of average. NRCS, these green dots here, my cursor is right next to the location for Boulder, is in the 90 to 109% range. And then we're also looking at regional drought conditions, and one source of information is called the US Drought Monitor, and this is a network. They produce maps for the entire United States, and I'm showing you a map of the state of Colorado right now. The map on the left is for last Thursday. The map on the right is a year ago, so you can kind of, the white means no drought. And as you get darker in color, that's more and more severe drought conditions. So you can see that in the South Platte Basin, where my cursor is, we're faring much better this year than we were last year. The reverse is true for the Colorado River Basin, western Colorado. But still, overall, like the yellow is abnormally dry conditions, but not severe drought conditions. So we're sitting pretty good with drought conditions this year. And then the fourth factor to show you tonight is our reservoir storage. And this is a pretty strong indicator for us, how well we're doing with water supply. So this orange line is the amount of storage we have in our mountain storage, so the North Boulder Creek, Middle Boulder Creek reservoirs. Where we're at this year, the gray band is our historic average going back to, or the range going back to 2011. And then the dashed line is the average from 2011 to present. So we're about average with our reservoir storage for this time of year. Some of you may recall Albion Reservoir is out of service right now for construction. So we're unable to store in that reservoir for the next 2 years. but that's about 5% of our storage. So even with that, we're sitting in a good position. So in summary, we've got average snowpack, average to above average stream flow forecasts, and we are expecting our reservoirs to fill this year. So that's a really good sign. When Joe talks about the start of the year, like our checking account, when those reservoirs fill, you know, we start over, we're in a good position. The CBT quota for the year, so the Colorado Big Thompson Water, they allocate a certain amount or percentage of your total units owned each year. This year, they just set a 70% quota. So that means for every unit of water we own, we have available 0.7 acre feet of water. And that's the long-term average for their allocations. So we are in a great position for water this year, and we do not believe that we will need water use restrictions. But we continue to monitor conditions over the course of the summer. We can update that drought stage status at any time that we need to. So that is the conclusion of the water supply update, and I'll if anybody has questions now, we can do that, and then I can go on to the two other topics.
The times where we're really happy to be average. It's not necessarily.
So it's a great average presentation.
Strive for.
What is the PSI right now? You said we're above 85, but.
Yeah, geez, I think it was about 1.80. It's quite high.
This process of renegotiating some of the management control of the river that's gonna happen by the end of 26 or whatever, will that have any impact on the availability of water to us and other CPT users?
I guess at this point, it's hard to say, but I will say that the amount of water that's Colorado River water that is in the CBT system is like a drop in the bucket for the entire Colorado River basin. And so any management decisions that happen, they may have an effect on the availability of CBT water, but they're not going to solve the problem by making big reductions to what's available to us. Okay, so move on to water conservation, and again, just talking about some highlights from 2023, and discussing what we're going to be focusing on in 2024. And some of this is coming out of the water efficiency plan. Big highlight for 2023 was updating the water efficiency plan, but one of the recommendations that came out from there is such a recommendation. Anyway, I think we told you guys we would come back and report on like what our conservation efforts are looking like. So I think maybe every year in April, in addition to the water supply update, we'll also do a water conservation program update. So in 2023, in addition to updating the water efficiency plan, and that took a lot of our time, we did work with our water conservation partners, Resource Central, PACE, and EcoCycle primarily, to offer and implement a variety of outreach and service programs. So we've got those programs listed up here. Maybe I'll just touch upon a couple of them. One, the lawn removal program. I think it used to be called, no, I don't remember what they used to call it. It was turf to, remember? Nonetheless, the idea is remove your bluegrass and replace it with a more water efficient landscaping. We received a grant from the state of Colorado last year to help with this turf removal. And so we're putting some of that water or that money into the turf removal program just to be able to offer more services or offer this to more participants during the year. But we had about 65 participants last year, estimating about 35,000 square feet of grass that was removed. Slow the Flow, our sort of like sprinkler audits, outdoor sprinkler audits that services both residential and commercial customers. We did about 70 of those last year. The garden in the box is the sort of like paint by number. You can purchase a kit of low water use plants and they'll have some diagrams of where you might want to plant them in relation to each other. So we don't subsidize those much, but we do for income qualified residents. So we offered some of those last year, as well as sponsoring 3 WaterWise seminars. And then PACE focuses really on our commercial customers. And so they'll go into businesses and offer advising services, as well as doing some direct installs of water efficient fixtures. And then with EcoCycle, they'll go into the classroom and do some lessons on, water conservation, or they have other programs as well. So we were in 12 classrooms last year through EcoCycle. And then for 2024, what we're planning on focusing on, in addition to those programs that I just talked about, we'll continue those with our water conservation partners. We got a lot of great recommendations that came out of the water efficiency plan. So we're looking at starting to implement those programs this year. So a lot of these are still in the development phase, but I'll highlight a couple of them. First one being integration of water conservation into other city planning efforts. An example of that is we are undergoing what's called the Western City Campus redevelopment, which is this site right there, the Alpine Balsam Project, it used to be called. So it's going to be kind of a central hub for city offices and facilities. So we're working with our facilities department on ways that we can implement indoor and outdoor water efficiencies into that new space. Another one to touch upon is an appliance voucher program. So some feedback that we got from the water efficiency plan update process was that we could offer rebates, but there's still people, that's money after the fact. Somebody still has to go out and spend their money and then get reimbursed for it through a rebate. To be able to reach more people, potential better program is to offer a voucher, which is, they've got the money up front to go purchase water efficient appliances. So we're looking at how we can develop that program this year. We're also looking to develop some relationships with or partnerships with community groups who are already out there in the community doing work. There's some groups that they're very much interested in water conservation. So can we leverage, the connections that they have, the work that they're doing, and again, reach more customers. And the final thing to touch upon is expanding our demonstration garden program. And the way we are doing that this year is we are looking to do our own city turf replacement pilot project. So this map here shows this area, Baseline and 30th Street. And there's this parcel identified here, 5,000 square foot parcel, which is sort of in the right of way, kind of at the junction of some paths and the roads. And this is an area that our transportation department manages or maintains. We are looking, we want to do a pilot project where we are removing the bluegrass using 3 different non-chemical methods for grass removal. And then we will seed it with some native grasses. And really the point of this project is to develop a lot of information on both the methodology for removing the grass, the turf grass, how effective it is, and then how time intensive, labor intensive it is, and just develop a lot of this information that we then can provide to the public. Like a lot of people are interested in removing their bluegrass, but they just don't know what it takes. We're working with Native Edge, which is the contractor that won that bid, and they're actually really excited themselves about this project because they get a lot of questions from their customers and they just don't have the information to answer those questions. So they're going to be a really good partner in this project. So we're excited about that one. So that's kind of a summary of our water conservation program for 2024. Any questions about that?
Are there plans for the pilot project, like informative plaques, like on site so that people walking by and biking by can?
Yeah,
Or is that too down?
We are in the process of trying to figure out what information we're gonna be putting out there on site, or on a website, but that is part of the conversation of, you know, what information we want.
And during the process, you can be like, here, we're killing the grass 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Follow along here.
Yeah. And we suspect there's gonna be a lot of questions. There's gonna be plastic tarp or sheet out there, and then sheet mulching, which is like cardboard. So it's gonna be a very odd looking site, and so we do recognize the need to put some information out there. But that's part of it too, is so people can see what it looks like, and they know what they're looking at. QR codes, yeah.
But ultimately, it'll be like good looking zero scape space.
In the end, what we're wanting to do is try put some native grasses down and see what's the look of a native grass as opposed to a bluegrass. And how much water, we're actually separating this area on the water meter, so we will be able to compare water use for this before and after. And hopefully it looks all right. I mean, but that's it too. I think, you know, maybe shifting people's perception of what this type of space should look like.
So not so much zero speed and just for, yeah, thinking about speed.
Yeah, native grass, it requires very little water.
Are there additional state funds coming in this year? For
So
the turf removal?
Yeah, so we have $40,000 this year. Half of it's going towards this project, and the other half we're put towards Resource Central's turf replacement projects so individual customers can benefit that way through Resource Central. Okay. Then I'll move on to some of the water use questions that we had from the February meeting. So I went through and I kind of wrote down all those questions that were asked, and we said, we'll get back to you. So I think I might start just by summarizing what the question was and talk about that information. So the first question was, how does Boulder's water use compare to other municipalities? So this is some information that we put together during the water efficiency plan update. So right here, we're looking at Boulder. We're kind of falling right in the middle of water use. This is per capita water use. So we're at about 133 gallons per person per day. I should actually say this is the 4-year average from 2016 to 2019, and it's information we put together when we were developing the water efficiency plan. So it's kind of some baseline data that we have there. Water use last year was really low because it was so wet. So actually our per capita number has come down. So we're kind of sitting right in the middle.
Need to overlay like parcel size. Oh no, well,
There's a lot of ways you can look at it.
yeah.
Per capita is kind of an easy way. It's a number we have, so it's an easy calculation to make. And I just want to point out Aurora and Castle Rock are on the lower end. They kind of have some of the more aggressive outdoor water use and landscaping restrictions. So they're kind of in the front range, so they're kind of leading the charge on outdoor water efficiencies. And some of that goes back to just what their source of water is. Castle Rock is predominantly on groundwater, which is not too renewable, so. And then there was a question about, can we tease out how much of the water savings come from conservation versus or outdoor water savings are related to conservation versus just weather. And that's a harder one for us to evaluate, but what I put together here, and actually I didn't put together these graphs, one of our consultants did. So, but the blue bars are per capita outdoor water use, going back to 1984. And the green line is irrigation water requirement. So essentially it's how much water it's a measure of how dry it is. The higher the point on the green line there, the drier it is, and the more irrigation plants need to thrive. So you can sort of see, first of all, since 2002, which is where my cursor is right here, that's again when we implemented water use restrictions. So there's a downward trajectory of per capita outdoor water use over time. So we are seeing some savings there, but you can also see in some of these years where it is dry, we've got higher water use. I think that was more tied to the pre-2002 period, and since post-2002, we actually we don't see kind of those peaks in water uses when it's really dry as much as we did in the past. So this period right here, not seeing a lot of those big peaks, but this is some information we have to kind of tease out that question there. And then there was a question related to what are the drivers of water conservation or water efficiencies that we've seen, and can we distinguish between indoor and outdoor use? Indoor, outdoor drivers. So I put the next 3 slides, we'll kind of get to that. This first one here, the blue bars are total annual water use. And the black line is our per capita water use for both indoor and outdoor. So we're certainly getting more efficient in our water use per capita since 2002, which again is this red bar here, and our total water use as well has declined since 2002. Now, whether or not that's due to indoor or outdoor use. So this is that same outdoor water use graph that I just showed. And again, just pointing out since 2002, there is a bit of a drop in outdoor water use, but it's actually more pronounced in our indoor water use. So this is indoor per capita water use. And since 2002, we've really seen a decline in indoor water use. So the indoor water efficiencies really are a result, I think, of the industry improvements for appliances. And that's something that's really driven at the federal level, federal state standards. I think outdoor conservation is more driven by local mandates. So. And then the final question was, how does water usage compare to population change? So again, I put together it's the per capita water use in these blue bars, and then population is this red line here. So our population is increasing, but our per capita water use is definitely decreasing. So even as our population increases over time, we're expecting that buffers a bit or tempers a bit our total water use.
The overall water use is pretty flat, right?
It's kind of been fairly flat. Yeah, pretty flat. And again, the biggest fluctuations we see are really due to how wet it is. Back to this is the so this one is the total water use. So these blue bars here. So again, slight decrease, but I'm not seeing as strong of a signal as with indoor use overall. So that's what I've got. Any questions?
I know that when we moved here almost 20 years ago now, we started watering before, 8 a.m. and after 10 p.m. at night. We picked up on a lot of different types of water conservation things.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what the education looks like in the community around. Like, is it mostly EcoCycle that's doing that, or is the city also?
Yeah, I think we're trying to find ways to send messages out, whether it's on our website, but through social media is the big one as well, where we just will hit people with little messages throughout the summer about water conservation tips. And we are now looking another recommendation from the water efficiency plan was just, developing more information, for the public. So we're exploring some other avenues as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Are you gonna speak to anything on the next information item, or is it, you just want to mention that's a memo?
It's a memo only, and was gonna talk on it briefly under matters from staff, if that works for you.
We're good.
And so. It might be to add this from.
All right, on to matters from the board. This was the homework assignment. If there are no matters, you can move to matters from staff.
Great, well, I will get that started. We have a few updates under matters. I'll start by talking about the power outage that we had last week, and then I'll turn it over to our water quality team for a few brief updates. And so I think most people are aware that there was an Xcel power outage situation that started last Saturday, and Xcel proactively de-energized their electrical system in our area and the surrounding area for fire prevention purposes. And that meant that we lost the kind of the grid power to a number of our critical facilities in utilities, and had to make some operational changes. Our Batassa water treatment plant was run for the weekend on an on-site emergency generator, which was something that we have upgraded as part of capital improvements. We had a generator before, but just we learned from some of these events, and the 2013 flood taught us some things. And so that system ran really nicely on an on-site generator. It just automatically switches to that when you use grid power. Our 63rd water treatment plant was offline for construction and our own operational needs anyway, so there were no impacts there. Similarly, there's a major capital improvement project going on there that RAB has weighed in on in the budget cycle the last few years, and we're also upgrading our backup generator system there. We have, I think most of you know, but we have 8 hydroelectric facilities integrated into our water system. I believe most of them, but not all, were operating, and so we took those offline when we lost power. That power goes onto the grill, and we have contracts with Xcel and Tri-State to sell it to them. We don't have a way to use it for our own needs. The biggest impact that we had was at our water resources recovery facility, or our wastewater treatment facility. And the way that also has a backup power system anticipated. And the way that was done and designed was a dual power feed through separate substations with Xcel, which is having that dual feed and separate substations is an industry standard, and it's a practice that's accepted by the regulators. Unfortunately, in this situation, even though that system was developed in coordination with Xcel, they both got shut off at the same time, which caught our attention. Chris and I were talking on Saturday afternoon, and so. And had they were offline for probably an hour or so. We estimate we had 2 hours before the plant overflowed and raw sewage ended up spilling out onto the grounds and eventually getting into Boulder Creek. We were in coordination with Xcel, our Office of Disaster Management Director, Mike Howard, our city manager, was talking to them, and fortunately, they re-energized the system and we avoided an overflow. Really want to credit Chris and our operational staff at the wastewater facility. We have big capital projects going there as well. And one of the large clarifier tanks was offline because it was being recoated by a construction contractor. And so it was empty. And as we learned our situation with the power, the team made the quick decision to divert wastewater flow into that empty tank and were able to hold it long enough to get the power back on and resume operations. So that was good thinking on their part and bought us some time. And our city manager, Naria, provided a staff update or city update to our city council on this past Thursday, and she definitely touched on the utilities impacts, but there were impacts across the city with recreation centers and traffic signals and traffic accidents, and our own housing director brought his own personal generator to the Boulder shelter so that they would have power and could keep operating. So it was really impactful. I think understandable, given that a lot of wildfires start from electrical situations and down power lines, and it is a practice that's developing across the nation. I think Excel probably has learned a lot from their first attempt at it here. They'll be attending our city council meeting this week and talking directly to our city council, and so we'll certainly be coordinating with them as well, with hopes of avoiding a repeat of that scenario. And I think given that that's a new operating situation to contemplate for the future, just as we've made investments in backup power at other facilities, we'll certainly be looking at that, but starting with looking at the arrangements we already have with Excel. So questions?
So it's the expectation that Excel and the city will work together to come up with what the right path would have been, or what the right shutdown would have been for the wharf and for other essential facilities that.
That would be our hope. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I mean,
Yeah, that would be our hope. And throughout the weekend, I was listening. Anytime there's a disaster and our emergency operations center is activated, we have staff and utilities and other departments who are assigned to fill a wall over the weekend, and they provide every few hours there is a meeting that is conducted and people provide updates from various aspects. It could be county transportation or city utilities or city communications. And so we were having those discussions throughout the weekend, and what I learned and what the city manager shared on Thursday night is many critical facilities, and not just in Boulder, but surrounding communities as well. I think every water treatment plant in Boulder County was operating on backup power. And I know at least one community had kind of a limited amount of time where they could continue that. So I imagine there will be, and I would hope there will be, some stakeholder engagement going forward. I think, like other community members, we learned of the general plan that Excel had on Friday night or Saturday morning through email, and it was only a few hours before that we learned what was going to happen with the wastewater facility. So we didn't, had that been coordinated more in advance, I think it could have been avoided. For example, one of the two feeds to the westowater plant is underground, so it doesn't really present a fire risk. And I think Excel would have the ability to isolate that, but we'll be talking with them. We actually in the early 2000s, different generation of staff than is sitting before you now, but a lot of thought and planning went into it. And we made capital investments in the Excel system, and we pay a monthly charge for reserving that capacity for backup power. So. All right, and have a few updates on the water quality side, and Megan Wilson Outcall is our senior manager of our water quality group. And she'll go through those and start by talking about what was in the memo tonight for the industrial pretreatment program. The reason that was presented to RAB was coordinating with our agency partners at the Environmental Protection Agency and coming to agreement on how that could be published, and doing it with RAB made the most sense for us. So she'll talk about that and the Eurasian water milfoil situation at Boulder Reservoir, as well as a regulatory update on PFAS. So Megan, good news, she's in the meeting, the Zoom meeting, which is not where we started. She'll do those updates.
Okay, thank you, Joe, and good evening, board. Thanks for your time tonight. As Joe said, I'm going to start with just a quick update on the industrial pretreatment program. This was in your packet, and just wanted to describe a little bit about what that's about and see if you have any questions. Sherry Duran is our industrial pretreatment supervisor, and she's here too and can answer any questions that I can't. Just as basic background, if industrial pretreatment is a new term for anyone, this program ensures that discharges into the sanitary system from industries and businesses meet certain standards and don't cause harm to the collection system, the water resource recovery facility, staff, and the discharge into Boulder Creek. So it's looking to make sure that the pH from industries is within a certain range. Any chemicals they're discharging are treated prior to the waste going into the sanitary system, things of that nature. And then we also regulate restaurants by requiring grease interceptors so that grease doesn't build up in the collection system. Last year, I think it was last year, we made some updates to the industrial pretreatment code in the Boulder Revised Code. And following that, it made sense to update our enforcement response plan. So this plan is largely an operational document for us. It provides kind of specific enforcement actions for any violations of the code. It doesn't change the code. It's well within our authority and is similar in nature to the previous draft of the plan, but just provides more detail. And it ensures that if we do have any violations, that we're kind of applying any enforcement remedies in a fair and equitable manner. Luckily, we have really great industries in Boulder, and rarely do we really have to do any enforcement. And we really kind of focus on compliance assistance if we learn of any problems that they're having. This program is directly overseen by the Environmental Protection Agency. That's a little bit different from most of our clean water programs and the safe drinking water programs, which are overseen by the state. But for industrial pretreatment across Colorado, EPA is the direct regulator. So as we were updating this plan, kind of in response to some comments that EPA had, they recommended that we do public notification as part of their approval process of our enforcement response plan. And so we have reached out directly to our industries that are permitted. That's about a dozen in the city. We published a notification in the Daily Camera, and as we have conversations with other entities like restaurants and people that we don't have day-to-day contact with, we can let them know as well. So far, we haven't received any comments, but we'll continue to accept comments for the next 3 weeks or so. And then if we do get any questions, we'll respond to those, of course. And then our next step would be to submit this ERP for final EPA approval. They've seen it and said it was approvable. So pending this public notification process, we expect it will be approved, and we'll finalize that internally and be able to use it as needed. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions or feedback.
anything on our end.
Okay, great. Well, I'll go to PFAS next. So switching gears. You may have heard in the news that the EPA finalized drinking water standards for PFAS, for 6 PFAS compounds last week. This rule had been in draft form for quite some time, so not a surprise that they came out. In case anyone doesn't know, PFAS is a class of man-made compounds. They are pretty ubiquitous in our environment, used in a lot of household products. Anything that is water, oil, or stain resistant may have PFAS chemicals in it. And they're really found all over the world at this point in water and air and soil. These, as I said, EPA developed standards for 6 of these compounds. The city last year, to comply with a different EPA regulation to monitor for PFAS, we monitored for 29 compounds, including those 6 that are now regulated. And all of those results were non-detect. So at this point, we believe we will be fully in compliance with the new standards without any additional treatment. There will be some additional monitoring and reporting requirements beginning in 2027. So we are very fortunate to have very good source water supplies, as Kim presented on earlier. And so again, fortunate not to have to investigate new treatment methods or anything like that. Any questions about PFAS? Okay. And then finally, we have presented on this fairly recently, last year, and our team typically gives an aquatic nuisance species update on the Boulder Reservoir. But we have found Eurasian water milfoil, which is an aquatic nuisance plant. We found that about 2 years ago in Boulder Reservoir. And last year it increased in density more than we had anticipated. And so if you're kind of familiar with the reservoir, all along the western coves side of it, and including the swim beach, is kind of where the plant has taken up shop. So we've been looking into management options in partnership with Parks and Recreation and also Northern Water as a co-manager of the reservoir. Right now, the impacts are really mostly on recreation. Its density can interfere with swimming and boating. So Parks and Recreation is exploring some near-term treatments this spring focused on mechanical removal. They might move the swim beach a little bit to an area where the plant is less dense. From a water quality and water supply perspective, it's not really near the intake, and Boulder Reservoir is used only as a backup water supply at this point, since we treat directly off the Carter pipeline at the Boulder Reservoir water treatment plant. However, if we did have to treat that source, or it became even more established, you could notice maybe some taste and odor issues. Again, only if we had to treat off the reservoir directly. We are, with those partners I mentioned, Parks and Recreation and Northern Water, exploring long-term management options that will include routine vegetation surveys to better sort of target where treatment is needed. We may use some strategically placed lake bottom barriers. It could look like targeted herbicide use. And we're working with a consultant who has extensive background in reservoir management and specifically with Eurasian water milfoil. So we're waiting for the consultant's final recommendations in May, and we'll kind of go through those. The Parks and Recreation staff are updating their board next week with a similar update, and we will keep you informed as we look at those management strategies and likely come back this summer with some more specifics on what that long-term management looks like. So not great news for Boulder Reservoir, and it will be a long-term management issue, but hope to at least keep it under control as much as we can. Any questions on that?
You just answered it, Megan, but just curious, like, yeah, long-term, are we just learning to live with it now? And trying to manage it as best we can. There's no removing it altogether.
Very unlikely that we'd be able to just eradicate it once it's established. So yeah, we are looking at long-term management.
Megan, is that just a risk to recreation, or is there a harmful aspect to it that would cause treatment to be really necessary?
So the primary impacts are on recreation. We have colleagues who do triathlons in the reservoir and can attest that it is difficult to swim through in places, and then can also impact boating. From the water quality perspective, again, it's nothing that's bad for you. It just would result in taste and odor issues. And then the reservoir is used as a water supply downstream. And so if that outlet got clogged, things like that, that would require management. But I think it is mostly for recreation purposes that we need to manage it.
Would add to what Megan said, and I was just talking about the Excel update and mentioned a few investments we've made with the board's support, like backup generators and capital improvement projects. Back in 2018, the board had a decision on the Carter Lake pipeline, which we already had a canal delivering water seasonally to our Boulder Reservoir or 63rd Street Water Treatment Plant. So there was a discretionary element to it, but we learned a lot from the 2013 flood, and I think made the justification for that pipeline stronger. And so with the board's support, there's another resilience investment we've made in the city. The report that Megan just did would be a lot bigger deal to us. I mean, it still matters, but we can now take water from our northern water sources all year round directly through the pipeline. And we can still use it for water supply purposes, but in the moment, some of those decisions can be hard to make. And it's a balancing act of what things do we prioritize, but happy to do those investments now. So I think that is what we have for matters from staff, and if you would like, I can move on to the upcoming agenda.
Sounds good.
So upcoming agenda, we have the 3-meeting series on the capital improvement program, which is something that we landed on several years ago and have worked really well. We usually start in May with a refresher to the board, particularly for a new board member. The capital improvement program is huge, and so giving everybody a month to just remember where we left off last year and what we were looking at, and a refresher on everything that's in front of us. And that happens in May, and then in June, we come back and really do a deep dive into the program and what we're recommending as staff and what we're seeing for the next 6-year program. And really look to have a dialogue with the board and get your feedback in that June meeting. And then we come back in July, hoping to have addressed that feedback and ask for a recommendation from the board on the CIP and utility rates, which annually is one of the more important things and one of the more the votes that the board has that has some gravity to it. So be looking at that. Last year, we ended up doing the May meeting just memo only and a packet only because we had some scheduled racial equity training for the board that happened to be on the same night that the board meeting was on. I don't think that's going to be replicated this year, and I know that scheduling of the training is something that is in discussion now, and I think there will be a few different options for board members. Then the other thing in July, we'll have an information item. Megan or her team will be back, I would assume, on the lead service line inventory, which is something that we've talked to the board about at times. And it's just inventorying across the city. The service lines are the water lines that go from the city infrastructure to people's houses and just doing an inventory of those to see if we have any that are lead that need to be replaced. We don't expect to find a lot, but it is a regulatory thing that we have to go through. So we'll have we should have a good update on that. And then typically August is a month we haven't had a meeting and it's looking like that can work again this year. So that's how things are shaping up for the next few months. That's what I have on the upcoming agenda.
Sure. Any question?
None for me.
20 minutes early, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.
Katie.
Thank you, staff, for the updates and information. You said before we adjourned, but.
That's okay. Appreciate the feedback.